I am well and truly feeling the Christmas hat vibe now. I don't send many Christmas cards, but I do love sending them to special people and members of my family who I don't necessarily see that often, but I just want to send them something more personal. So if you have some special folk in your lives too, then you ought to give this a go. And if you're someone with a mum or dad, they will really appreciate this. My kids note. It doesn't have to be perfect, and this little tutorial is aimed at anybody at any level of ability. The most important thing is to enjoy the process and to stick a heartfelt message inside the card to the person that you love. I've used A6 purpose-made craft cards and envelopes for this. They cost me around about £4 I think for 50, and they last for ages. You can get them in most craft shops and certainly online too. This little guy is going to be a robin, so starting off with just a very simple oval shape with a couple of wings. And this is pretty easy to do. You could do it in pencil first and then go over it in pen if you wanted to. I make videos on drawing, planning and publishing every Friday. Drawing because I've been an illustrator for a very, very long time. And planning because I love bullet journaling, I'm trying to make the most of my time, and publishing because I'm a successful indie author of children's books, and I think it's one of the best jobs in the world. I love it. I'm using here my Staedtler Fineliner pens, and 3 different sizes. I've got a 0.1, a 0.4 and a 0.5. Just using those different thicknesses can make a lot of difference to how you view the lines. And using my Crayola Supertips, I'm just giving these guys, this little chap, a bit of colour. I'm just basically using the brown for most of the body, the wings and around the eyes anyway, and the red is the bottom half of his tummy, so that represents his red breast, and the brown also there on the branch, and then some green for leaves, and then a little bit of yellow for the stars and for his beak. And then if you go back to taking your very, very finest one, which mine is the 0.1, if you do these little squiggly lines across the stars, it gives it a lovely little bit of texture and makes them look more interesting than just plain colour. So if any of the subjects that I normally cover, that's drawing, planning and publishing, are your thing, then poke the subscribe button and ding that bell that's next to that red subscribe button, and it will give you notifications when I upload a new video. And you can also share the love by telling your friends about my channel. I find it very therapeutic, and I hope you do too. We've got a washing line here of different Christmassy socks and hats. And at the moment they just look pretty plain, but once you start putting some colour into it, you'll see what I mean. I like to wonder whether Father Christmas has a washing line a bit like this, but I've also got a very, very tiny little sock there on the end, and maybe that belongs to an elf, or maybe it's a baby sock, who knows? Maybe Father Christmas is a dad. I also just wanted to mention that if you're interested in learning how to make your own children's books, then I'll leave a link in the description box below, which would take you through to the information that about the programme that I've put together this year. I spent all summer doing it, and I've put a lot of love and attention into the course itself. It's a comprehensive step-by-step course on how to go from words on a page to published book in your hands. And if you're watching this around about Black Friday in November 29, excuse me, in November 29, check it out now, because I've got a crazy special deal on at the moment. It's well worth having a look at. You get the preview is free anyway, so what's the harm in looking at that? And there is card number 2. Card number 3 is much more about doing a quote and using these lovely Tombow pens. They're brush pens, and you can probably just about see that I have done this in pencil underneath, very, very faintly, but it doesn't show through once I go over it with the brush pen. And there are lots of tutorials about how to use brush pens on the internet. One of the best probably is Amanda Rach Lee, so it's well worth seeking her out. But you can buy these Tombow pens singly because they are very expensive, because they are so really good, very, very high quality. But if you want to just buy one and have a go with it, that's how I started. And also the Crayola Supertips, which is what I'm using here for the darker green, they are also quite good when you're starting out doing your hand lettering. Use those because you can get the thick and thin lines with it. But do go on and have a look at the tutorials that various people have done, especially on YouTube. It's really well worth it, and with a bit of practice you can start to really get it. I hope you can see this. I can see that I've filmed it slightly side on, but hopefully you can see roughly what it is that I'm doing here. And it says we wish you a Merry Christmas, but you can put whatever you want on your particular card. It could be absolutely anything, but do it first in pencil very lightly, or if it's not lightly you could just rub it out a bit so it just knocks it back, and then you won't be able to see it through. Or you can use a dark colour, of course, and then you won't be able to see it through at all. There we go, number 3. Card number 4 again is a lettering one, but a lot simpler this time. I'm just using, I think that is a 0.5 Staedtler Fineliner. And if you get a mug and draw yourself a circle first so that you can see that you need to go within that circle. And that's a 0.2, that's actually a graphic pen, graphic with a K. Just make lots of scribbly circles around the outside, so to me it looks a little bit like galvanised wire almost. Then these are little lights, and I'm also going to draw some tiny leaves as well, so that anything that's got 3 little prongs to it, that's a light, and I'm going to colour it in one way. Anything that's 1 or 2 is a leaf, and that's going to be green. Be really careful when you're rubbing stuff out. Make sure that you rub away from your hand so that you don't crease up the paper or the card that you're using. Just a little bit of colour. You don't have to go mad, because it's using the greens and the reds and a little bit of pink in there as well. It's going to look really colourful and very pretty. And these cards took me, probably each one took me about 2 minutes. I have sped it up a bit so that this video doesn't take forever, but really if you sat down with a bunch of these cards you could knock off a whole load of them sitting in front of the TV for an hour or hour and a half, something like that. Next week we'll be looking at how to make a last minute gift. Actually, it doesn't even have to be that last minute. If you want a framed quote that means something to you, then subscribe and ding the bell. And also, if you want to be super efficient, then go and buy yourself an A4 frame. Comment below if there's anything in particular that you would like to use, otherwise I'm going to be using my discretion. I'm off to wash my fairy costume in magic dust, so I will see you next time. Nanu nanu!